All right, so let's do some buy low and sell high. Who wants to start? Dave, you know what? I want to start with this. You said yesterday on CBS Sports Network, and I'm going to second it. I'm going to double down on buying low on
I am too.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah, it's the second week in a row that I've got him on my buy low list, and it makes all the sense in the world. This is a team that's going to have to start using him more because eventually because Rashee Rice is not going to run free 14 times a game every game. Like eventually defenses will say, all right, we've got to really focus on him and let Mahomes have Kelce. They will take their chances with Kelce. You'd think that they would have figured it out by now, but they haven't. And this is one of those pick your poison type things. And maybe it oscillates over the course of the season. That's what I get for trying to use a good word. Can we start the podcast over? Bottom line, I think Kelce's going to start seeing more targets, certainly get used close to the goal line. And he just seems like a screaming buy low right now. The people who drafted him, they're probably very frustrated. I don't think they're going to want to stay the course with Kelce. If they can get out of him, maybe they've got another tight end to use in place of him. Make a low-endish offer for Travis Kelce.
I would like this a lot better if the Chiefs had lost a game or two, like they probably should have by now. Like, I don't know why you'd force feed the old man until January.
I just don't think that it can get any worse for Travis Kelce.
Right, but you could give up someone who's helping your fantasy football team, and it could stay this. He has 69 yards for the season.
Yeah, he's just not getting the targets.
Would you give up Tony Pollard for Travis Kelce?
No.
You'd rather have Pollard than Kelce? Okay. It's fair. Amari Cooper?
No.
Najee Harris?
Sure. I said I'm not giving up a starter.
Okay. Well, Najee might be. How about Rachaad White, Heath? Are we so low on Rachaad White that we will move him for Travis Kelce? Slug for a slug.
Maybe.
All right. Then we've got a pretty decent idea of where Heath values Travis Kelce. I'll have him a little bit higher than that. I think that he can rebound and be.
I was trying to put this tweet to the care. I'm just going to keep starting him.
It's a great freeze.
Okay. Sorry. You say that again, Heath? We lost.
I don't care. I'm just going to keep starting him.
Oh.
And Kelce's definitely on that team. Andrews is on that team. Mahomes and Anthony Richardson are on that team. I was having a harder time finding running backs. Like I'm more ready to move away from the running backs that I drafted that have been bad. But I guess Rachaad White might be on that team.
White could be on that team. Right. Najee, you're ready to move on from?
I didn't draft Najee Najee was like RB30 before the season, and he's like RB30 for me now. So
okay. But for those who might have Najee on their fantasy teams,
I hope I can do better.
I would hope so too.
Okay. Jamie's here. Hey, Jamie.
Good morning.
All right. So more buy lows. More buy lows. Anyone want to go?
I got a whole list.
CeeDee Lamb.
He's on the list.
All right. Buy low on CeeDee Lamb. It's not overcomplicated. He's going to go off.
Yep. And you don't have to buy super low. If you could buy him for like early round 2 value or late round 1 value, great. I think it's gonna be fine.
All right, Dave, just give me your list. Give me your list in 10 seconds on each player.
Quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Running backs, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown. Brown's on the list now the second time in 3 weeks. Wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Mike Evans. Packers wide receivers, and you already know who the tight end is.
Tyreek Hill. What are we thinking there?
Not quite the same value in return as what you'd hope for as you would with Lamb. But maybe like third round value, that would be buying low on Tyreek Hill. Eventually, the Dolphins will get him the football and he will make some big plays.
My concern with Tyreek, and I wrote about this yesterday, is like what if we go 6 weeks and we don't get Tua, and then we get a good month, and then it's November, December?
Yeah, why would they bring him back?
The Dolphins are playing at Lambeau, and then they're playing in Cleveland during the fantasy championships. Like, I'm not sure I'm that excited about having him.
Would you call him a sell for what you can?
I don't know. What is that?
Sell.
He might be on the I don't care. I'm just starting him.
Oh, he's definitely on that list. But I'm not prepared to give Tyreek Hill away. You can give him away for 5th round value, no problem. Someone in your league will take him.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ready for that yet.
Okay. Yeah. Are we starting him when Tua is not healthy?
That's kind of the point of what Heath was saying is we don't care what the situation is.
Well, I do. I mean, if he has another bad game, because this would be in like 5 games with Skylar Thompson or worse, where he has not really been good.
I mean, if you drafted Tyreek Hill and Malik Neighbors and Rashee Rice and Chris Godwin, you're not starting him.
Fair. That's a very good point. But outside of those rare situations, I'd say that's going to be pretty rare. Like, I'm not going to start Jackson Smith and Jigba ahead of him every single week.
You're starting Deontay Johnson or Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
Harder to do in non-PPR, but yeah, perhaps so.
Jamie's wearing a shirt that sort of looks like my Star Trek shirt, I would say.
Not at all.
And also someone
said,
"Oh
yeah, I mean, I remember seeing Captain Kirk wearing a Nike shirt all the time on Star Trek.
The Nike logo was hidden." Someone also said that Tom Brady's football is in Jamie's background.
Deflated, yeah.
Yeah, completely deflated. All right, Heath, Jamie, you want to go buy low?
Dave gave a lot. I had Richardson, Lamb. I'm still pretty certain that Bijan Robinson's going to be a top 3 running back, and he's like RB 18 again, like he was last year. So if you could buy low on him, I'd do that. And I would rather have him than a couple of my sell highs that have done much better than him at running back so far. Mm-hmm. And I think Mike Evans is going to be fine too. So I'm buying low on him.
All right, yeah. So Anthony Richardson. Are we sure? Because I felt the same way. I said the same thing yesterday, but are we sure? Because God, he's been terrible the last 2 weeks.
It should be low.
Are you buying Richardson as he can be my starting quarterback rest of season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just might not trust him this week. And I might even lay the groundwork for the trade now, but not actually make the trade happen until after week 4.
But I think
this is a tough match.
Because I know Kyler had a bad game last week. But like Anthony Richardson is actually QB 17 on the year. You might be able to trade one of these quarterbacks that we didn't draft as a starter that's been really good for him.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray's at QB 6 at 22.5 points per game. Nobody's giving him up for less than they drafted him for.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And no one's going to want to give. I'll give you some names. You can tell me. Would you give up? Let's go back to Rachaad White. Would you give up Rachaad White for Anthony Richardson?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be ready to do that. Calvin Ridley.
Oh, God, yeah. Richardson? Yeah. I mean, I screwed up. I mean, I should have tried to trade Ridley last week. It was so obvious.
It's true.
I think Ridley's just going to be we call him the Tyler Lockett, right? He's going to have 20-point weeks, and he's going to have 4-point weeks.
I'd rather set Tyler Lockett.
The poster child of boom bust flex.
Hey. Okay, Jamie, how about you? You got some buy lows?
I mean, they said all the appropriate ones.
Okay. All right, so CeeDee Lamb, this is the time to get him. This is not, earth-shattering, statistical breakdown here. It's just obvious. Go get a guy when it's obvious that you should buy low on him. And I got a few that are not as obvious. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers coming off a game where he had only 4 targets, but that was over a 25% target share. Zay Flowers is 8th in target share. He is 27th among wide receivers, 27th in targets per route run rate, which is not terrible at 24.8%. He's run the same amount of routes as Brandon Ayuk and Garrett Wilson, so he's running routes. He's 60th in yards per route run rate. That's bad. We need to see that change. But he has 2 end zone targets, Zay Flowers. He had 3 end zone targets last year. I just think it's pretty obvious, and I'm a little surprised by this, I guess based on what I thought preseason, that he is just the focal point of the passing game. He seems to be option 1, 2, and 3 for them. So, yeah, I mean, I expect Mark Andrews to have a bigger role, and there will definitely be bad games for Zay Flowers because it's the Ravens passing game. But they seem, even after last week, I'd say they seem more willing to throw. So I would try to buy low on Zay Flowers. I think he's really good. And then this one I'm on the fence about. This has to be like a really low, selling kind of a bench player or something like that, or someone you don't really care about. But I just think there's potential for Brian Thomas. Trevor Lawrence missed him on what probably would have been like a 20-yard gain. And he overthrew it. He was wide open. It was one of the nicer plays that they
was the interception.
That was the interception. And if he catches that ball, he's got like 6 catches for almost 70 yards. And he's got 3 solid games where he's been a flex in the first 3 games of his career. So we see the talent. Another guy that I feel like I was wrong about, even though I haven't really been wrong about because he hasn't done that much, but Brian Robinson Jr. is the kind of guy that if you acquire him, you might get nothing out. You might just get a flex out of it, but you might get something special out of it. Because
Is he playing the Saints too?
All right, how many times? Go ahead, make the joke. I screwed up.
No, you said his name wrong. That's why.
What did I say?
You said Brian Robinson Jr.
No, Brian Thomas Jr.
Brian
Thomas Jr.
But is he a buy low? Like he's been better than he was drafted to be.
He hasn't really done that much.
He's outscored Amari Cooper, and he's like tied with Garrett Wilson on the season.
And who wants him ahead of Garrett Wilson?
To put him in a category really doesn't matter. Right? Adam's point is try and trade for him.
I'd like to get him, but I would not expect to pay less for him than he was drafted for.
It leads to a larger question. I'm sorry, Heath.
I don't know if you have to pay more, but okay.
It leads to a larger question. How many of the guys that we named do you think the average fantasy manager is like ticked off about? Like I could see the average fantasy manager being totally ticked off about Kelce. You could put Mark Andrews in the same boat. There isn't a fantasy manager that's ticked off over CeeDee Lamb right now.
What?
I don't think so. To the point where they want to get him off their team. They might be unhappy with the production.
They might be 0-3.
But I bet they would expect to get first round value still for CeeDee Lamb. So we can try and trade for them. Yeah, you can try and trade for them low. But I don't, and that's the problem with Tyreek Hill as well. Like, I don't know how many people would be interested in moving on from Tyreek Hill unless they were getting incredible value.
Well, CeeDee Lamb's tougher to trade because nothing's really changed about his situation. It's just been performance. For Tyreek, at this point, you're trying to get something that's going to make your team better while selling Tyreek to a team that's probably 2-1 or 3-0 with the chance of, hey, Tua comes back, you're getting the best receiver in fantasy or one of the top 3 receivers in fantasy. That's what you're selling that person. But you have to get something significant in return to make your team better. The CeeDee Lamb manager sees the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a little bit different.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. The light at the end of the tunnel. Do you think a lot of fantasy managers who have Brian Thomas Jr. see the light at the end of the tunnel?
No, but I think that's where, putting him into a category really doesn't matter. Like to say he's a buy low, to Heath's point, like you're trying to get something of better value for him for a guy that was drafted around pick 100. That's probably not something that's going to make your team better. But to Adam's point, like to try and trade for him is not a bad move at all because you're looking for what the upside could be. Like Adam said, he's done this in his first 3 games. We know rookies tend to peak toward the end of the season. So you're trying to, get him for something relatively cheap while getting the best of him still at the end of the season.
This is how I would approach a guy like Brian Thomas. It's hard to make a trade just for Brian Thomas. Go to the Brian Thomas managers page and see if there's another player on that team that you really want to make a trade for. And then throw Brian Thomas into the deal in some capacity. That could be a way because it's hard to make trades for like marginal players. It just like doesn't really happen all that much unless they're part of a bigger deal.
Well, like if you're not playing Calvin Ridley, for example, he has another big game this week against the Dolphins, and you're saying, okay, these are going to be too fluky for me. I don't want to sit on this and use Ridley. I'd rather get somebody who by the end of the season could be better than Ridley. That's a perfect trade to make.
No, I would not trade Ridley straight up for Brian Thomas. I would trade Ridley. What? Why not? Because Ridley might be better than Brian Thomas.
But if you believe in Brian, my point is, if you believe in Brian Thomas and you don't believe in Calvin Ridley, you're trying to get the player who you think is going to finish stronger.
Yeah, but I don't believe in Brian Thomas. I believe in the potential of Brian Thomas. This is what I think. I think we, as fantasy analysts, believe in Brian Thomas more than the casual fantasy player that has Brian Thomas on his roster. Because he just he had 2 catches 2 weeks ago. He had 48 yards last week or something like that. I know he caught a touchdown in week 1, but he really hasn't been that good. So I think maybe my perception about him is totally wrong, but I don't know that people are really valuing him that high.
You picked up Carson Steele off the waiver wire. Would you give up Steele for Brian Thomas?
Yeah, especially if I were 2-1 or 3-0.
Okay, they're equal on the trade chart this week.